Welcome to 30 Days of Photoshop. Today we're going to show you how to transform, scale, rotate, and align objects. Hey there and welcome to Phlearn. My name is Nace. You can find me on Phlearn.com where we make learning fun. And welcome to our 30 Days of Photoshop series. We've got a great episode on very practical uses within Photoshop. We're going to show you how to transform, scale, rotate, and align different objects, all based around the transform tool. Anytime you're working with more than one element in a photograph, maybe you have graphic design elements or different photos that you want to put together, you need to be able to move them, transform them, scale them, and basically get everything together in a nice organized manner. And in today's video, we're going to show you how to do that with not only photographs, but we're also going to create a graphic logo from scratch. We got an awesome tutorial for you. Let's jump into Photoshop. So let's start off by opening all of our assets for this tutorial. You can actually download everything on Phlearn.com. Just follow the link right down below. So the first thing I need to do is get everything onto the same document. And of course, we're working with awesomely fun donuts. So we've got a couple pictures of donuts and a nice donut that we're going to integrate into a logo. So I'm going to use my move tool, which is kind of the starting point for all of our transformation. And we're going to put everything together. So on this layer, let's go ahead and click and drag from one document to another. And we're going to do the same thing with this donut. So click and drag from one document to another. And now everything's on the same document. We don't need these anymore. We can go ahead and close those out. And we're going to click on F for full screen. So what I want to do is create a little bit of a layout given everything that I've got here. So I'm going to first go ahead and crop this image a little bit larger. Let's hit C for the crop tool, okay? And we're going to make a square crop, but I do want it to be a little bit larger. So let's hold Alt or Option and just make this a bit larger and hit Enter. Now, before I hit Enter, actually, I want to make sure where it says Delete Crop Pixels, I want to make sure that is not checked. Okay, so checked is not recommended. Unchecked is recommended because you don't want to go deleting permanent pixels because you might want them back later. So make sure that's not checked and then hit that little checkbox up there. Okay, so now it's time to start transforming, scaling, and rotating everything. So we don't need our little icon for now, this little donut icon, but we are going to go ahead and start moving all of the different resources here. So we're going to start with the move tool. So you can hit V for the move tool, and we have a couple of options with the move tool. Up at the very top, we have auto select. Now, my suggestion is to actually turn this off. This basically means that you have to click on each layer that you want to move around. Okay, so if I want to move layer 1, first I click on layer 1 and I can move it. If I want to move layer 0, I have to click on that. Even if, let's say I'm clicked on layer 1, even if I click over here, it's still going to move layer 1. Now, if auto select is turned on, if I click on this layer, it's going to start moving this layer, and this one's going to start moving this. Now, this might seem kind of useful, but especially when you start to have many different layers and maybe smaller layers and layers with transparency, it can be pretty tough to actually click on the exact layer you want. So my suggestion is to turn off auto select. And if you want to at any time, you can hold Control or Command and then click on a layer, and that will actually select that layer. So that's my recommendation, kind of how to get around this. Okay, so auto select is now off and we're looking good. So the first thing I want to do is build a little bit of a composition. Just about everything that we're going to be doing today is through the transform dialog. So to start this off, we're going to hit Control or Command T for transform. So once you bring in your transform dialog, you have quite a few options here on the top. So let's go ahead and go over those. Now, up here at the very top left, you have a control point that you can move anywhere around your image. By default, it's here in the center, but if I click and drag this over here, and then maybe I click and drag right out here, you can see I can rotate my image, and it's actually going to rotate right around that area, which is incredibly cool. Okay, now you can hit Escape, which will just get you out of it, Control or Command T, and then you'll get right back in. So you don't have to have this turned on. By default, it's just going to be in the very center. But for instance, if you wanted this to be on the top right, and then maybe do a rotate around the top right, this can be really helpful. Now, moving down the line, we have our actual translation. So we have X and Y, so you can just simply click on your X or the Y axis and move these up and down. You can change your width and your height very easily, and by default, they have a little chain link between them, meaning they're going to be locked. So if I change one, it's going to change the other. You can unlock this very easily and then just scale the width or the height if you want to do that as well. Let's hit escape and then Control or Command T again. Here you can change your angle. Just click and drag, or you can type in an angle. Like if I want to have that be at 45, you can do that. Of course, if you hit Control or Command T, you can just move your cursor right outside and simply click and drag and rotate that around. And don't forget, you can move this control point at any point in time. All right. And then last, we have our horizontal shear and our vertical. All right. And these you probably won't be using as often. Actually, here at the very end, we do have a warp. So if you click there, you can then click in different areas inside your image and then warp them around. For instance, I can bring this corner right up there. Okay, so a lot of really interesting ways we can actually move things around. Now, my suggestion, if you plan on doing a lot of scaling and rotation with your images, I suggest first transforming these to smart objects. That's because, let's go ahead and show you why. I'm just going to take this layer and duplicate it by hitting Control or Command J, so now I have two of these. Now, my first layer here on the left, I'm going to go ahead and make this a smart object. So we're going to right click and go to Convert to Smart Object. Okay, and now my second layer is not going to be a smart object. So this one is smart and this one is regular. So let's go ahead and transform both of these. I'm going to scale them down quite a bit. So Control or Command T, we're going to click on the top left and just scale these down really, really, really small. Okay, they're going to get extra tiny. See how small they are? Very, very small. Now, when you bring something down very small, you lose a lot of information. Like it's trying to take that much information and compress it, you actually lose quite a bit. So when you make it bigger again, well, you've lost that information. So let's go ahead and see that. Control or Command T, and we're gonna scale this up again. There we go. Let's just make sure we hold Shift while we do that. So it's gonna maintain the aspect ratio and hit Enter. Well, let's take a look at what we have. The regular layer, which is right here, look at all this information that we've lost. The smart object, we haven't lost any information at all. It still looks like we have all the original resolution of our image. And the reason is a smart object actually doesn't transform the object itself. It transforms an instance of that object. So anytime you're going to do any heavy transformation, making things larger or smaller, heavy rotation, things like that, I highly suggest creating a smart object first. It's going to keep you from losing information in your images. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete the regular layer. We don't need it. And let's turn this background layer on, and we're going to go ahead and turn that into a smart object too. So let's right click here, and we're going to go convert to smart object. There we go. So we've got two different layers. Now I want to create a little bit of like a catalog almost. So what we're going to do is start off by bringing this layer. I'm going to flip this horizontally. So we're going to hit Control or Command T. You can right click and flip horizontally or vertically, either way you want. Okay, let's go vertical again. And then I'm going to click and drag and rotate this around. I'm also going to hold the Shift key down. There we go. And that's going to allow me to make sure that I'm rotating at 45. There we go. So if I just click in here, drag around wherever I want, it's not going to constrain it at all. If I hold Shift, it's going to do it by 15-degree increments. There we go. Now, in this case, I can also see that this line is actually not perfectly horizontal, okay? And I have a lot more space on the left than I do on the right, neither of which I want. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to View, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on my rulers. Rulers can be incredibly helpful when you want to measure things, and also when you want to make sure your lines are straight. So what I'm going to do is actually click right here in the top ruler and drag down, and this creates what's known as a guide. So with this guide now, I'm going to go ahead and try to get this center line with these donuts. I'm going to try to get that perfectly horizontal. So let's hit Control or Command T again. So you can see every time I'm entering into a transformation, it's Control or Command T. Let's go ahead and transform this around just by rotating it. And I do need to scale this up a little bit. Let's hold Shift to scale this up. Okay, because I want equal spacing between the left and the right. There we go. And that's actually starting to look pretty good. Let's go ahead and zoom in and make sure that the line for our donuts corresponds to our guide, and it does. So let's go ahead and hit Enter there, and that looks pretty good. See how much easier that was with that line? It takes away all the guesswork. Now we're just going to use our move tool, and I can click right here on the guide and just drag it right back up and it gets rid of it. You can also go to view and down to clear guides. Okay, well that looks good, but now this line is not perfectly horizontal. So we're going to go ahead and load a layer mask. Let's simply click on our layer mask icon. We're going to go to our rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to make a selection right over here. There we go. And then go ahead and invert this area on my layer mask, basically filling it with black. Okay, or you can just go hit Shift Delete and fill it with black, because I don't want it to be visible there, because as you can see, it's not perfectly straight across, and I do want these lines to be perfectly straight. So let's hold down Shift and hit Delete, and we're going to fill our contents with black. Perfect. So this is looking really nice. Now we have our next object here, our smart object. This we're going to transform as well. So Controller Command T, let's go ahead and rotate this around. I'm going to hold Shift. There we go. And let's go ahead and put this right up here. Fantastic. And make this a little bit larger. I'm going to hold Shift to maintain the aspect ratio. And I want to make sure it's visible both on the left and the right, my spacing there. So let's go ahead and put this donut underneath the others. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and drag this up a little bit. I actually don't mind it with, yeah, that's pretty cool right there with the center line. Now, in this case, I do want some room for my type, because that's a big part of what we're going to be doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and extend this entire image vertically. So let's hit C for the crop tool. I'm going to go ahead and clear my aspect ratio so I can make whatever aspect ratio I want. There we go. And let's go ahead and extend this vertically. We're going to go a little bit further even, just so I can show you how to fill this area in if you need to do that. Okay. And that'll also allow us to bring our other donut up a little bit, but I'm going to run into just like visually, I think either like we bring it up here where you can see the hole, that dark hole there, or we got to hide it. But having halfway cut across dark hole, I don't think that works. So we're going to go right down to about there. Okay, so now I want to fill this area here at the very top with this turquoise color. It's actually really easy to do. It's not a solid color right now. You can see it's a little bit lighter here than it is over here. So my suggestion would be to use the brush tool. So we're going to create a new layer. We're going to use our brush tool and just paint with a large soft edge brush. Now, B for the brush tool, you can hold Alt or Option to sample colors. So I'm going to sample over here and just paint right up here. There we go. Sample over here and paint right over there. Fantastic. And you can see we filled that up very nice and easily, and it blends in perfectly with the rest of our photo. So we got a nice looking flyer going on. Now it's time to move on to our actual type. So let's go ahead and turn our donut on. There we go. We're going to bring this up here and start typing. So I'm going to hit T for the type tool, and we're going to type in donuts. There we go. I can't really see it just yet. So we're going to open up our property window. Now, your property window in Photoshop CC 2019 contains a lot of information for text. If you're using an older version of Photoshop, you'll want to use your character window instead. So here in our property window, I want to change my color to white. There we go. The font face I'm using is Lado, and I want to choose my font weight all the way to black. So I want this to be a very heavy font weight. There we are. And let's go ahead and just bring this a little bit larger. I think that looks great. Now, the next thing I want to do is start aligning this type, because I want it to be perfectly centered left and right with everything else with basically the entire flyer. So if I want to align something to the entire flyer, the first thing I want to do is make a selection of the whole flyer. To do that, we're going to go to Select and then down to All. So it's selecting everything. You can also hit Controller Command A. So now this donut, this type here, what we're going to do is go to our Move tool. And because I have my Move tool selected and I have a selection active, I have now options for all this alignment up here at the top. So I can align this to the left, center, right, top, vertical center, and bottom. Or I can combine them, like vertical center and horizontal center. It's going to be right in the very center. Now, let's go ahead and deselect. Let's say I have a selection over here. So I'm going to use my marquee tool and make a selection right over here. I can actually let's use the donut now for an example, I can actually align everything to that selection too. So I could align this to the left, center, and right, top, middle, and bottom. There we go. So let's say I wanted, this donuts to be basically exactly in the center of another donut. Let me just make a elliptical marquee selection right around that donut. There we go. And then this donut, I can use my move tool and align it vertically and horizontally. And look at that. It's going to pop right in the center of that selection. So make your selection first, and then you can use your alignments. So let's go ahead and turn our donuts back on. Okay, now this is actually aligned horizontally. I just need to move it up. So I'm going to move it up, but as I move it up, I'm going to hold the shift key, and that's going to make sure that it can just go straight up and down, or it could go straight left and right, or at a 45-degree angle. But I don't want it, I already aligned it left and right, so I don't want to just grab it and try to like put it up there, right? I have to hold shift, or I have to align it again, which is not a big deal. Again, just hold down Control or Command A, make sure your move tool is selected, and then align it vertically. Okay, now my little donut here, first I need to turn it white. I need it to match the rest of the logo. So when I hit Control or Command I, which just inverts it, super easy. Let's go ahead and zoom in, and now my donuts, the font here, I'm gonna go ahead and click on my layer mask, okay, because I wanna hide the original O. So we're gonna go to our marquee selection tool. There we go, just make a selection around the O. And here on my layer mask, I'm gonna fill this with black because black hides everything on your layer mask, okay? So Shift Delete, and it's gonna fill that selection with black. Perfect. Now I can take my donut and I can just put it right into place. But again, I wanna center this, right? Because I don't need it to be, like, I don't want it to be too high or too low. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna grab my rectangular marquee tool and make a selection of the top and the bottom of my letters. Okay, so I don't care about left and right here, basically just top and bottom. So what we're gonna do now is go make sure we're selected on our donut. Let's just go ahead and call this donut. I'm gonna go to my move tool and we're gonna align this center. Boop. So now this donut is perfectly aligned with the center of my text. So now let's go ahead and transform it. So Control or Command T, I'm gonna drag my top down, but you can see as I do this, it's squishing down and going to the bottom and I've lost all my alignment, but no fear. First, we wanna make sure we're holding Shift to where we maintain our aspect ratio. And then I'm gonna hold Alt or Option. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna scale it by the center. Okay, so when it's scaled by the center, look at that. Perfect, I hit Enter, and then I'm gonna use my marquee tool, line it up with the left, the end of the D and the beginning of the N, and I can use my marquee tool to line it up vertically as well. So now this donut, the O rather, is the same size as the letters, top and bottom, and it's aligned both vertically and horizontally exactly where I want it to be. So it should look like it belongs, right? And yeah, it totally does. That's a lot better of a strategy to where, let's just show you the other strategy, okay? Here's what the other strategy would be, to just like try to put it in there and transform it and, try to just move it to about the right place, and that looks about right. Yeah, well, it's not about right. Well, it actually is about right, but it's not right because you were just using, just your eyes without any measurement tools. So that compared to this, you can see this is like visual harmony. It actually is perfectly centered vertically and horizontally and is the exact right size. So we always want to make sure we use our alignment tools whenever possible. All right, we got a little more text to go. We're gonna hit T for the type tool, and I'm just gonna type in Emma May. I think Emma May with an E. I'm just making up a donut company, but I wanted this. I wanted this letter. Let's go back to our property window. I wanted these letters to be a little bit larger, rather smaller. I wanted more words up here so I could use smaller type. That's what I'm getting at. Now I'm going to change the font weight here. We're going to go down to just a medium font weight. There we go. Now we could probably go down to a regular font weight. Okay, and now I just want to make sure I just make this a little bit smaller. There we go, because I want to line these left and right. Okay, so now we got a couple of questions. We've got MMA's donuts, doesn't look perfect just yet. Let's go ahead and turn off MMA's. We've got our donuts, the font, and the donut itself. Now, these two, I'm like, okay, we're ready for these to be one, right? When I move one around, I don't want to like move this around and then have to move that around and try to put it in the perfect place again. That's super annoying. We just want to group them together and then they actually act as one. So let's hold Control or Command and click on the two of those and group them together. There we go. And we'll just call this donuts. So now I can move them both at the same time. And again, I can hit Control or Command A, select everything and align these wherever I want on my image. Okay. So let's go ahead and align them here. And I'm just going to move them up holding Shift. There we go. Now MMAs, we want to do the same thing. So I'm going to hit Control or Command A to select all. We want to align those horizontally with our entire document. So now both MMAs and the donuts are aligned perfectly vertically. All right, and I just want to make sure that the sizes pretty much match. Yeah, they're very, very close. So now I just want to make sure to move MMAs up a little bit because it's too low. All right, and for this I actually recommend just being zoomed out. You can use your up and down, left and right arrows, by the way, when you're doing this. I think we could go down a little bit lower with the font weight too. So let's go from regular, let's go to light. There we go. Now, as I did this, I need to make it a little bit bigger. So let's hit Control or Command T. There we go. Just scale this up just a little bit. And again, now, because I made some changes to it, like I scaled it down and up, I need to make sure it's centered vertically with my entire image because it needs to be centered vertically with not only my whole image, but my logo itself. So let's hit Control or Command A, and we're going to center this vertically. You can see it moved a tiny bit, but now it's going to be centered with the donuts. By the way, you can also, if I have just the donuts over here and I want to center MMAs to the donuts, like if you don't want to center something to the document, you can actually just hold Control or Command, click on two different layers, and then I could right align those, okay? I could center align those as well, and they'll center align to each other. So just another thing you can do there. Let's just hit undo a couple times and make sure that we select all and they're both center aligned. Okay, well that looks great now. I'm going to group the two together and we're just going to call this logo. Okay, so my logo is grouped together. Control or Command T, let's just make this a little bit larger. There we go. Fantastic. And now this looks really nice. I just, again, Control or Command A to select all. Align that vertically, and then I want to make sure that my spacing from the very top of this document to the top of this donut, I want to make sure that is even, right? I don't want this whole thing to be too high or too low. It's not gonna look right. So we just grab our marquee tool, we make a selection from the top, there we go, right down to the top of this donut, and then hit V for your move tool. This brings up your line controls, and then we align that horizontally. So there we have it. Our logo, this MMA's Donuts, is now perfectly aligned from the left and the right, and the top and bottom right here, and everything else flows really nicely. So what we have is a very nice cohesive design where everything is actually like exactly in line and in place where it needs to be. So you can see these transforming, scaling, rotating, and alignment, it all comes into play, especially when we create things like this, because without all these tools to kind of like help us through this process, we'd have to just eyeball everything. And it'd be like if you were trying to build a house and like, you know, the first level of the house was like at a slight tilt this way, and the second level was like at a slight tilt this way. It'd be like a Dr. Seuss house, right? It would just like, you'd put a ball on the floor and it would just kind of lean that way. The same thing is true with our design. Like if things don't line up well, you can feel it. It just like, it feels kind of off. So having these tools helps you make everything cohesive. And when you look at it, it's like, oh yeah, it looks like everything exactly where it's supposed to be. Well, thank you so much for watching today's episode. Don't forget to join 30 Days of Photoshop. It's absolutely free. You can do so by clicking on the link right down below. You'll get a newsletter email every single day, keeping you up to date. You'll get all the sample images so you can download and follow along. You'll get a bonus calendar and some bonus extras that are only available as a part of this series. Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.